USC's win over Nebraska is a key road win in the Big Ten.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. Joined alongside me is Sophia Jones, the analyst for the Golden State Valkyries. You can see it on her shirt. I'm Kalia Butler, the sideline reporter for the Chicago Sky. Thank you so much for watching Locked On Women's Basketball and tuning in with us. What we are going to get into today is the NCAA women's basketball getting less attention. Insane conference play. There were some games, we'll tell you that. But to start us off in some key games coming from, what day is it? A Monday night. is USC over Nebraska. USC currently ranked 17th, beating 20th ranked Nebraska 74-66. They hand Nebraska the first loss of the season, snapping their 12-game unbeaten run right now. And this was honestly a big matchup for USC, who seems to really be putting the pieces together. They had a strong showing at the beginning of the season, had a couple of tough losses, but bouncing right back into it largely because of Jazzy Davidson, the leading scorer for USC, who in today's game had 17 points and 8 rebounds.
Yeah, and she had a couple of substitutions in and out as well, because she appeared to have an injury in the third quarter, but then she would come in, appear to kind of re-aggravate the same injury, subbed out, did that maybe 2 or 3 more times before she just had to completely step out of the game during the fourth quarter to get attended to. But I think it was really key for the other players around her to step up in that situation. And like you said in the cold open, the fact that USC is able to get this win, it was their first road win of the season. So that's so important. And those LA teams in the Big Ten have some egregious travel schedules certain times. So that's why every single game and win that you can pick up on the road is going to be even more important when you have to travel that far distance. But Jazzy Davidson, she always affects the game so much. I'm not sure why there are a couple times that Nebraska just continued to drive to the basket when she was around the rim, because she ended the day with 5 total blocks. And she is actually the only Power 4 player to lead in all statistical categories for her team. So that's points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. She's doing everything. But like I said, it was also the supporting cast that really helped out this game. Kennedy Smith in particular, she also had 17 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists in there as well. She finished 8 of 12 from the field, so doing it at an efficient rate. She really handled the ball well. There were multiple players that initiated the offense for USC that allowed for it to flow. But I think for them, it really started on defense. They have such tremendous athletes that are just so active with their hands. They're really able to force Nebraska to commit some turnovers and then just go the other way in transition. This is a team that can score one-on-one and likes to play fast.
I think USC is really going to find their success within the Big Ten, especially when they're playing the way that they are right now. And I feel like we say that they've had a low point in the season, if you will. They're 10-3, but if you're looking at the teams that they lost to, you lose to South Carolina, Notre Dame, and UConn. Those are, first of all not in your conference. Second of all, incredibly difficult teams to get past for such a young core that we're talking about. When you're looking at, obviously we're now in full swing when it comes to conference play. And when you're just sort of prioritizing what your season's going to look like leading up to March, this is when things really need to start clicking for you. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing from USC, is that things are starting to click for them, especially when you have a Jazzy Davidson, you have a Kennedy Smith that's stepping up. And their defense is kind of fueling the offensive side of things too. Their defense is definitely clicking. And offensively, when you have just so many scoring threats and so many agile and athletic guards, they have really found their way into the paint no matter what. So this is a very good win for them in terms of, I feel like they just need to keep stacking days in terms of just building confidence in a young core, knowing that they can go up against other ranked opponents within the conference and still come out successful.
Exactly. Nebraska was a very tough opponent to get this win over, especially playing in Nebraska. It was extremely loud in that arena. They're ranked number 20 in the nation for a reason. For Nebraska, they got to the free throw line at a really high rate, and they had a fourth quarter run. USC looked like they were going to pull away, but like I mentioned, Jazzy Davidson had to go in and out of the game, which led to a little bit of stagnation and ISO-based offense from USC because of that inconsistency. But in that fourth quarter run from Nebraska, they were extremely aggressive on defense. They definitely defended for the drive against USC as well, playing them as non-shooters essentially and really trying to pack the paint. But Nebraska had a couple of end of game errors where USC continued to leave the door open, just not really finishing a couple plays. But Nebraska just couldn't get good looks, or they didn't convert on offense. They had no made field goals in the last 2 minutes and 42 seconds. And when they were down 7 towards the end of the game, one of the very last possessions, they waited way too long to foul USC. It was a situation that they needed to foul, send USC to the line so that they could get the ball back. But they were kind of just running around, one of those where as someone watching their game, you're like, okay, now's the time that you want to, act. But they just didn't do that. So I think Nebraska also has a couple things that they can learn from this game. And like I said, particularly in that end of game situation.
Looking at Nebraska, a standout player for them was Britt Prince today, 18 points and 7 assists. Obviously led for the Huskers a lot offensively. You also have Logan Nisley and Eliza Maupin, who had 10 points off the bench. But there's some clear separation there in terms of, the starting lineup and kind of what they were facilitating, alongside having some players coming off the bench and being able to be a spark plug for the Huskers. But USC just overall having a little bit more of a balanced attack, which we have seen them start out with in their last couple of significant wins.
Yeah, like you mentioned, for Nebraska, it was Prince that was that main playmaker. Didn't really get a whole lot in the half court consistently from her teammates. I was also impressed with the fact that she plays with her hair out. She just wears a headband and plays with her hair out. I have my hair out right now, and I feel like I just want to throw it back into a ponytail because I'm getting overstimulated. So that was just really impressive to me. But like you mentioned, for USC, they got a little bit of more balance, especially they had about 3 players in some serious foul trouble between Dunn, Samuels, and Smith. So they had multiple people coming into the rotation and having to make big, aggressive plays when they needed to, and they were able to step up.
A big win for USC. But right after this, we're going to get into some other games that you should know about from today. During basketball season, there's nothing like being in the building. The energy, the crowd, that first big run that gets everyone on their feet. Fans want to be there for those moments, not stuck refreshing screens or guessing what tickets are really going to cost. That's where Game Time comes in. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage back, making it incredibly easy to score amazing tickets, fast, simple, and without the guesswork. Browsing the Game Time app is straightforward and intuitive. Finding tickets takes just a few taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today and get in on the action. Some other games to be aware of from today that were all pretty solid ones overall. Number 6, Michigan at Oregon. Michigan comes away with a win 92-87. But this was a game that went into overtime and was truthfully a nail biter until the very end.
It really was. I mean, both teams just scratched and clawed throughout just the fourth quarter and the double overtime. If people didn't watch the game, the best way I could describe it is, if anyone is familiar with that 2024 Olympic final in the men's 400-meter dash, when Quincy Hall is just totally getting into and bringing everything out of himself to hawk down those players or the other runners in the last 10 meters of the race. That is how the fourth quarter felt. And then the next overtimes felt like they just kept extending the finish line, but Quincy Hall is still running. That's what that game felt like. Everything was so frantic. The players were exhausted, and you could tell that they were exhausted, if anything, for the reason that there were a lot of missed free throws that really kept both teams in the game. Michigan was 16 of 38. That is 42%. And then Oregon was 20 of 34. That is 59%. So like I said, a lot of just tired and legs and exhaustion out there. Multiple key players were in foul trouble. A lot of players fouled out. And Oregon gave it everything they could to snag the upset. They really had a great comeback to take the lead at one point. But Michigan just found their edge mostly in the rebounding battle. They out-rebounded Oregon 60-34 with a particular edge of 28-6 in offensive rebounds. And looking in the second chance points, they just also really dominated that second chance points opportunity as well.
Another game within the Big Ten, some fun Big Ten ones today. Wisconsin, number 7 Maryland beats Wisconsin 97-59. Maryland really got out to a strong start, scoring the first 14 points of the game, and then just never let up from there.
Exactly. Like you said, first 14 points, Oluchi Okananwa scored a career high 28 points, and she really helped to allow the Terps to get out to that edge quickly. But it was that first quarter that Maryland punched first, and Wisconsin wasn't really able to recover. Wisconsin had 11 turnovers already in that first quarter. And then the Terps have a 12-0 edge in fast break points the first 10 minutes of the game, with a 14-5 advantage in points off of turnovers, while dominating the glass 16-3. So that entire first quarter led them to have the 29-8 lead. And like I said, Wisconsin just never recovered.
Another one within the ACC, Pitt went up against number 18 ranked Notre Dame. Notre Dame comes away with a 94-59 victory in the ACC. And with no surprise at all, Hannah Hidalgo was having a Hannah Hidalgo type of night. She made 13 of 23 from the field, had 30 points, her second consecutive 30-point game. She also surpassed head coach Neil Ivey for most steals in program history. Neil Ivey had 348. Hannah Hidalgo now has 350, but she is still behind Skylar Diggins, who has 381 steals in the program.
And Hannah Hidalgo is still not even a senior, so she has a lot of time to make up that record. For someone that has also had multiple 10-plus or that had that 16 steal game, I think that is very much within her reach, potentially even this season if she was a senior. but she just continues to cement her name in the record books. She has scored 10 plus points in each game of her career, and in 78 consecutive games, scoring in double figures is a program record. And her 60th career 20-point game are tied with Arike Agumbawale for most in program history. So it looks like she is going to just continue, like I mentioned, to snag some of these records. But in this game in particular, I also enjoyed seeing her just get a little bit more help from the other players as well. Ayana Moore scored a season high 23 points. She had 5 3-pointers. That was huge. And then Crass Prosper also added 18 points, 10 rebounds, 4 blocks, and 4 steals. Prosper was the only player in the ACC with at least 4 steals and 4 blocks in a single game this season. And that's the type of help that Hannah Hidalgo is going to continue to need for Notre Dame to be successful moving forward in the ACC. I think this was a great momentum win for them, a confidence boost for them as well. But like I said, it's going to be a total team effort because Hannah Hidalgo is fantastic. She's going to get hers, but she can't do it all by herself.
Yeah, Notre Dame had just 8 available players today, but they have won 5 in a row. So hopefully they can hold on to that depth, that light depth that they have for as long as possible. We talked about that early on, and essentially every time Hannah Hidalgo is mentioned is who else can step up and help her if Hannah Hidalgo can't be the savior that day. And I think Notre Dame is starting to click when it comes to that. I think there has been a little bit more of a balance. Obviously, when you have Hannah Hidalgo who's putting up 30-point performances, that may be hard to balance out a little bit. But there's more contributors instead of feeling like it all has to be up to her. And I will have to say, you have to give them credit for them really bouncing back after losing to Michigan in the way that they did. I think they've essentially completely recovered from that, learned a lot from it, and have been able to sort of change their ways. We've seen people really stepping up for that program as well. So looking really good for Notre Dame so far as they head into ACC play. Another ACC game today, number 16, North Carolina defeated Boston College 90-37. Nyla Harris had a good game, 19 points, had 9 rebounds. Nyla Brooks added 15 points for North Carolina, who has stayed within the top 20 for some time now.
They have, and I think this was just a really great dominant win for them to bounce back within ACC play after suffering that overtime loss to Louisville earlier in this month of December. But they had a couple, like you mentioned, standout performances. They were only up by 7 at the end of the first quarter, but they finished the half on a 16-0 run that included 7 points from Renaya Kelly, who I think is, at the beginning of the season, she was playing limited minutes because she was managing injury. She played 21 minutes today. So I think that was a good boost to see her more involved in the action again. But then they started the second half with a 26-0 run. And that just really did it. I mean, when you create that kind of separation, when you maintain that kind of rhythm, it is so hard to overcome. And Boston College was not able to.
Coming up after this, we're going to get into if women's college basketball is getting less attention this year.
Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new, boosts, bonuses, and surprises. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour. Every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour, only on FanDuel, the official sports book partner of the NBA.
Is NCAA women's basketball getting less media attention this year? After the UCLA and Ohio State game, UCLA head coach Corey Close said that, quote, honestly, if I'm being really blunt with you, the energy in the building was great, but having no media here at all from either team or either no AP, no nothing, doesn't say a lot. We're the only double ranked game out today, the only one in the country, and we have no media day today. No media here. You're the only one that's asked to talk to me, and credit to you, but I don't mind if you print that either. Like, for the only game that had two ranked opponents, to not have more coverage over this particular game is disappointing, honestly, end quote. Not the only coach that has necessarily, or only person that has necessarily brought up women's basketball, specifically college this season, in certain aspects, maybe not getting the attention that it has previously and what we've seen in kind of the past couple of years. Obviously, a lot of fans that enjoy the WNBA now started off as college basketball fans. You kind of pick the player. Obviously, one that comes to mind is going to be a Paige Beckers or a Caitlin Clark, an Angel Reese. You have that player that you really enjoy watching play within college. Maybe you follow them into the league. But it does pose the question, as the league and as women's basketball is continuing to grow and have more eyes on it, is everyone taking up the opportunity to make sure that they are getting the proper coverage that they deserve? And when you do have two ranked teams like UCLA and Ohio State going up against each other, especially within Big Ten basketball, to not have any media coverage there can be concerning.
It can, and I mean, I felt like we did a great job covering it. Not to pat ourselves on the back, but just have to throw that out there, because Locked On Women's Basketball is always going to give women's basketball the attention it deserves. But exactly like Corey Close said, it is just interesting which storylines certain media outlets pick and choose that they really want to feed into. I would even bring up that I've been seeing some discourse on social media recently about a quote unquote lack of storylines this season, which makes me think about the landscape of women's basketball and how it's grown. And a large reason of why it's grown has been the accessibility. So when you're putting it on ESPN, ESPN Plus, when you have Fox or Peacock, they've done a couple games as well. So when more people actually have the chance to engage with these things, the more that they become involved. And when I hear about the quote unquote lack of storylines, it makes me just think about a potential lack of accessibility. I would even bring up this USC versus Nebraska game here on Monday, but it was on Big Ten Network Plus. This was another double-ranked game, the only of the day, USC 17, Nebraska number 20, and it didn't really get a ton of coverage because it wasn't even nationally televised for something that was on a 3 p.m. Eastern time tip on a Monday. It's just a little interesting why people didn't decide to give that, a little bit more attention, and to also just put some numbers because I was interested. But Big Ten Plus costs $13 a month and about $90 a year for the full conference pass. That isn't something that people are willing to spend all the time just to watch select games, especially when you're looking at this double ranked matchup that I personally do think should have been nationally televised. I myself have to get a little creative in how I watched it. I won't elaborate, but if you know, you know. But yeah, it brings me back to that accessibility point where if people don't even watch or they can't watch because certain things aren't covering it, that's just contributing to maybe a little less intrigue and interest from consumers.
When you have a top 20 matchup that is happening midday on a Monday between the times of Christmas and New Year's, it makes it really difficult for anyone that has a job, other things going on, to schedule time around the day to watch a 3 p.m. Eastern time tip. That's not when prime time women's basketball should be getting played. And that's the hard part when you go back to it, is having that fight for certain media rights deals, having certain college games be able to get ESPN attention, be able to watch it where you can just turn your TV on, you're scrolling through, what do I want to watch today? Oh, awesome, USC and Nebraska are playing each other. That's going to be a big one. And you can just click it. I will say I have not watched many games, not necessarily women's basketball, but from NBA, other teams, other leagues, because I have to buy 1,400 different passes to even be able to watch the game. I don't have enough emails to keep putting into subscriptions and have a free trial. I'm running out of names. But it really is also, when you're looking at USC and you're looking at Nebraska, these are potential WNBA. Like, they're professionals on these teams. Jazzy Davidson, you can't convince me that she's not going to be in the league one day. So you have to give these players the credit that they deserve. I would also throw in there that there's not as much drama this year. When I think there's no storylines, I think there's a connection between people kind of loving women's sports having a certain element of drama to it, and everyone's chilling this year. There isn't this gigantic discourse between things, where I think it also kind of almost have to have a villain in somebody's story in order for some of them to get prime time spots. That's going to be my hot take of the day.
No, and I think that is unfortunately so true across multiple sports, but especially for women's basketball, where, just circling back to the whole moment where a lot of people for some reason decide to call LSU the villains when they were on that national championship run. There wasn't really that much grounds to necessarily label them as that, but that's just what they ran with. And it did force a lot of people to be interested and watch. And so it brought a lot of negative eyes, though, as well. And unfortunately, people are more emotionally attached to the negative sometimes than the positive. But I think if people think that there aren't storylines this year in women's basketball, they need to do a little bit looking, because there are a lot. They're just positive. And we need more positivity in this world. So let's try to focus on those.
Spread love and spread the news about what's going on in women's basketball. We will for sure do that for you guys. Thank you so much for watching Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast for all